first thing I remember about Mr. Gist was that he was young and he was cool, and he seemed to be the first teacher who was confident enough to manage a classroom without being a strict disciplinarian. He was the first teacher I remember that seemed to treat us as young adults as opposed to children. And I think we returned that respect for the most part. We were an easy class to manage. Of course, there was always Mac Davis, free-spirited Mac Davis. You never knew what kind of day a teacher was going to have with him in the class, but for the most part it worked out pretty well. And what made Mr. Gist a great teacher was that he really enjoyed teaching class. Whether it was from teaching grammar through those strange Rube Goldberg-like sentence diagrams that we did, or teaching literature and never missing an opportunity to point out a sexual innuendo or two, to the great delight of the boys and to the embarrassment of the girls, and sometimes to the delight of the girls and the embarrassment of the boys. But nevertheless, there was always something new and different going on in his class, and it was always fun to be there. And then when I look back and I think on Mr. Gist's teachings and the profound effect he had on my education and my career, I think the word that comes to mind is fundamentals. To be really excellent in academics or athletics, you really have to know and practice the fundamentals of your craft. And the skills that I developed later in boarding school and college, and my ability to write clearly in presentations and letters and documents and things that I've done for a living, all those skills were built on the foundation of fundamentals that Mr. Gist built, or helped me build, in Antilles School. So Mr. Gist, I thank you for that.
My most influential teacher ever was Mr. Gist. My post-Antilles plans were some amorphous idea of maybe pre-nair stewardess or beautician. And then one day, Mr. Gist says to me, "Marcy, come in here, I want to talk to you." Uh-oh, what now? Too many cigarettes behind the chemistry lab? No, some scoring had come in from some national testing that had taken place, and he thought that I should go to college in the States. I said, "Mr. Gist, mucho dinero." And he goes, "Don't worry about it. We'll take one step at a time." To make a long story short, he got me brochures. He helped me fill out financial applications. So, I adore you, Mr. Gist. Published 2 books, perfect syntax and spelling. We love that. And the most important, on a serious note, you allowed me to dream unimaginable possibilities for my life. So, wish I could be there.
Anytime.
When I think English teacher, I think of Mr. Gist. To me, he is the quintessential English teacher. And the larger meaning of that, for me, is a person who instills in you a love of words and of literature, and especially of writing, a love of writing, which I have had my whole life, I think, because of Mr. Gist. And what, to me, made Mr. Gist a great teacher was he had high expectations of us as students, but he was also really human and had a great sense of humor and a great sense of telling stories, and just related to us as a human being. So thanks, Mr. Gist.
Here's what I remember about Mr. Gist. All of our teachers at Antilles were young and enthusiastic and passionate about their subjects and really committed to the students and to what they were teaching. But I don't think a single one of them had what you'd call a teaching degree. They just got into their subject, and then their passion would bring them along. The year I remember best with Mr. Gist was reading American literature. We started out with Rappaccini's Daughter, which was a little visit to New England where I'd never been at that time, and it had no reality based on my Caribbean existence. And then we went on to Faulkner and O'Connor and Porter and Salinger, and then eventually we got to the butt breaker of all time, Moby Dick. I had thought of myself as a dedicated reader until I ran into Herman Melville and the Great White Whale, but for about 4,000 pages or so, it seemed, of whaling lore, symbolism, more whaling lore, more symbolism. I was so bored, I can't begin to tell you. I actually skipped PE that year, or that semester. And I used to go downtown and meet a friend and have a Coke, and he would explain to me what was happening in the next 3 chapters, and that's how I got through the book. And of course I got caught every time, so I had to watch the Louvers at the lower school for about a semester, but that's okay too. I am grateful to Dick for passing me on that marking period. But his greatest contribution, I think, it wasn't that he taught us to read, he taught us how to reread. What he said about Moby Dick was he reread that book every 10 years, and all I could think of at the time was, I have to read this once. Why would anyone read it if they didn't have to? But eventually I developed my own rereading list, and so now I too have books that I reread every 10 years. It's safe to say that kids these days really don't read, and they don't read the way we did. They read for information, but they don't read for pleasure. But we read for pleasure, you and Susan and Polly and Jane and Peggy, and we all read for pleasure. And Kyle. But it's coincidence? I don't think so. I think it's because we had Dick Gist for our teacher.
Memories of Mr. Gist. He was a very patient man, and I probably tested that more than most of his other students. In talking with other people, so many different people have told me how he introduced them to literature, or he saw talent or a skill in them that they didn't know they had. He's one of those gifted teachers in every sense of the word, and we were fortunate enough to catch him at the very beginning of his career. He put up with a lot from me, but he never turned on me. He was always willing to forgive, and I love to write now, and a lot of that I'm sure comes from the skills and the mechanical, technical aspects of writing that he was very good at. But I think his gift was more in awakening young people to the beauty and the adventure and opportunities that could be found between the covers of a book. So I, as so many other people, have a lot of affection for him, and it's really a treat to have him here with us for our umpteenth reunion.
Okay.
For me, Dick Gist was really sheer inspiration. He probably, more than anybody else I ever encountered, he had more impact on my future career. I remember when he first came to Antilles, I'd always liked school and I'd liked reading, but it was really when he became our teacher that I developed a real passion for literature, and it was because he seemed to have so much passion himself, to the point where I really just enjoyed English class. That was my whole reason for coming to school, and I even remember sometimes almost being disappointed on Friday afternoon that we didn't have English again until Monday. And it was really a variety of things that he taught for us, including poetry, which he was the first one who ever taught poetry to me, and that was really extremely exciting for me. And today I teach poetry classes, and I still remember the Lawrence Perrine book he used, Structure, Sound, and Sense, which I went on to use later. But really the most important event was, I think, in 11th grade when he taught The Great Gatsby, and that was actually my moment of epiphany, when I realized I had no doubts whatsoever that I would major in English in college. And he was so excited about the book, and he conveyed that so well, and I've still never encountered a better writer than F. Scott Fitzgerald. And so I went on to Mount Holyoke, majored in English, went to Chapel Hill, did my master's thesis in F. Scott Fitzgerald, then went on, did my PhD in F. Scott Fitzgerald and T.S. Eliot, and today at Sacramento State I teach undergraduate courses, one in Fitzgerald and Hemingway, and one in the Lost Generation writers of the same period, including Fitzgerald. And I teach a graduate course in the period of the 1920s, and I feature a lot of Fitzgerald there. And so there's just no way I can ever really convey how much he's done for me. I think and hope he knows some of that. Over the years I've tried to convey it, but I'm really I hope he knows fully how much he's done. And I also wanted to read what another student I know who said that Dick had impacted him greatly too, Jim Angel. He emailed me. He was sorry he couldn't be here, but he emailed me to say what Dick Gist had done for him. And he says, Mr. Gist was definitely the most compelling teacher I connected with at Antilles. He says his passion for and love of his subject matter was really evident from day one. He encouraged and instilled an atmosphere that allowed thinking and learning to be both challenging and enjoyable. The attitude was always, it's okay to think and it's okay to have an opinion, and in fact it is your responsibility and privilege to express it. Perhaps the most invaluable lesson a teacher can transmit. Willie the Shake was never the same after Mr. Gist, and I still thank him. And he told me, he has told me in several emails, you know, how much he owes to Gist, and he's now an artist in New York, but I know he reads a great deal because he sometimes sends me lists of books that I ought to be reading, and he wanted me to say how much Mr. Gist meant to him.